Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So the second round is now halfway through. Every single series has played at least 3 games. Some have played 4. So I decided to ask you guys on my Instagram for some of your hot takes. I do this like about once a week or once every other week. Hot takes. You hit me with them. You tell me something that you're noticing that maybe you don't think other people are seeing. Some scorching hot takes. So without further ado, we're going to get through it. Thank you, everybody that submitted them. I think I ended up going with like 12 or 13. Got a bunch more, probably like almost like 100, but we had to cut them down. So let's get into it. Up first from Nick, we got Rangers minus Shesterkin in power play are mid. And those are two of the most important things in the playoffs. As much as I'd like to hate on the Rangers, call them mid, goaltending is probably the most important thing come playoff time. You need to get saves, and power play is probably like the third most. I'd say 5-on-5 plays the second most. So I can't in good faith say that the Rangers are mid because they do two of the most important things at the highest level. It's not like they do something really minuscule, massive, and as a result, no, they consistently get great playoff goaltending from Shesterkin, and their power play is consistently very good. So although you technically are correct, those are two of the most important things when it comes to just overall hockey success. So I think you kind of are being a little bit of a hater. Next up comes to us from Zesty Zach 45. The Canucks might trade Demko. Damn. When looking at it, I assume he's saying that Shilovs might be the guy as soon as next year. And I think you need to pump the brakes. I think they're definitely going to run back. DeSmith's probably gone. I think he's an unrestricted free agent. They're not going to resign him. Shilovs is going to be the backup next year. Maybe after next season, if Shilovs plays amazing in a backup role or a 1B role, then the following offseason, I can't remember if Demko's a free agent next season or the season after. Then maybe you look at unloading Demko instead of giving him this ungodly, which he deserves, rightfully so. He's going to be the Vezina runner-up. He's going to want a contract that's $7 million, probably an upgrade over what he's making right now. I believe is $5 million. So when looking at that, I think maybe next offseason, but right now, Demko is the Vezina runner-up. He's going to finish the Vezina runner-up. Shilovs is having a very, very good playoffs. But we cannot massively overreact just to a handful of games from Artur Shilovs. We got to see next season playoff. If Demko cannot stay healthy yet again and has a bit of a dip in his numbers, then maybe we have this conversation and you get off him before he needs that extension. Right now, a little bit insane. Oilers, this comes to us from McKay Dickey 77. Pickard gets the start and Oilers take care of business versus Vancouver. And yeah, I mean, last night, some questionable calls, but overall, I thought Stuart Skinner just wasn't good enough. He just was not good enough for the Edmonton Oilers. I think if they get better goaltending, that game is probably going to at least overtime, I'd assume. So when looking at Pickard, if he came in at the start of the third period, so if he can get game 4 and actually give them solid goaltending, then maybe the Oilers can come back. I think they've probably been the better team when it comes to 5-on-5 in this series. Do I expect it to happen? No, not really. There's a reason why Pickard doesn't have a ton of NHL experience. He's not that good of a goaltender. But I think at this point, Skinner's probably wrecked mentally that I don't think you can go back to Skinner after pulling him in that third period. You definitely need to give game 4 to Pickard. But if Edmonton can get even 900 goaltending going forward, I think they have a very good chance at winning the series. Not to discredit what the Canucks have done, but I think Pickard just needs to play okay, and the Oilers can win this series. Next up, another Oilers one. Oilers should bring back Jack Campbell. And I know this sounds insane, but if Pickard gets lit up in game 4 and you're down 3-1, do you maybe somehow go to Jack Campbell? I'm not sure how that situation works with the AHL and all that, but it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. If Pickard gets lit up, I'm not sure you go back to Skinner in game 5. That would be the funniest thing ever. Jack Campbell comes in game 5, down 3-1. They pull off the 3-1 and come back or something ridiculous like that. And he goes from being just hated for his contract. He's a great guy overall, but hated for his contract to leading the Edmonton Oilers to the Western Conference Finals and maybe a Stanley Cup run after. I don't foresee it happening, but yeah, at this point, if they exhaust all options, if Pickard gets lit up, I could potentially see that happening. Oliver Tremblay, I don't know how it's pronounced, if it's French or something, but 34 says Bruins were always frauds, just like the Leafs were frauds. And yeah, I don't think that there's that much of a hot take. When looking at it, I said this repeatedly when I broke down each of the first round matchups. I said, I don't really care who wins this Leafs-Bruins series. They're going to get worked by Florida, and we're going to get to game 4 in this. Don't get me wrong. The Bruins could have ended up winning this game or at least forcing it to overtime. But yeah, there's nothing really that really stood out on the Boston Bruins. If Pasta, Marchand, and McAvoy and Swayman had to at least all play like their A-, or A+ game to have a chance, all 4 of them, every single game for the most part, to have a chance against the Florida Panthers, because Florida just has so much depth, just keeps on overwhelming you. So once Boston, once McAvoy had a bad game, they get lit up to holy hell. They just didn't really stand a chance against this Florida Panthers team. I guess they're frauds just because they had the high regular season point totals, 109 points, but I don't think really anybody had them as a top 5 actual cup contender. So I'm not sure I can fully call them frauds, if that makes sense. We kind of knew that they were not going to beat Florida for the most part. Next up, that tall guy, Cole, says Draisaitl will leave the Oilers next season if they get eliminated. So I guess this maybe means whether he's going to ask for a trade this summer if they get eliminated or he's going to walk in free agency. I'd see a tough time with Draisaitl. If he was American, I'd be like, oh, maybe he's going to dip back to the States, but he is from Germany, so it's not like he has a hometown, wants to go back to the warm climate. I don't know. I feel like McDavid and Draisaitl are not going to run from it, if that makes sense. I think they're going to stick it out. Maybe after, like, if they lose this year, I think they're definitely going to run it back one more year, considering Bouchard's only making $4 million. Draisaitl's only making 8.5. But I think if they get eliminated next year as well, and Bouchard and Draisaitl are still free agents, then I can maybe see Draisaitl walking away, just because in his mind, he's like, I want to get paid, rightfully so. I want that $13 million AAV. And Bouchard's going to go from $4 million to, at this point, it's looking like possibly $9 million isn't ridiculous. So if Draisaitl realizes, yeah, we can't win with me on a massive discount, Bouchard on a massive discount, I got to get out of here. But I think after this year, I don't see them massively blowing it up, especially they're going to probably bring in a new general manager in Holland. I think they're going to run it back. Next year would be Edmonton's potential last dance with this core, if that makes sense. I wouldn't say directly after this year. Next up, Jake Marchetta says the Rangers, just like every year, my Rangers will fold the nice series lead. When looking at it, of course, he's talking about 2022. They were up 2-0 on Tampa, ended up folding it. 2023, Devils up 2-0. Then Akira Schmid comes in, steals them games, and they end up blowing that series. I still think the Rangers are probably going to win this, but the fact that they did lose that game 4, that Carolina's power play did start to get going, and Carolina probably has been the better team 5-on-5 wise. It's just been, like we talked about before, the goaltending and power play has just, my ears all over the place. Might be gone in a couple hours, but this is getting ridiculous. But when looking at it, this is even worse. When looking at it, Carolina, has been the better 5-on-5 team. They just need to get some goaltending. They need to get their special teams cooking, and I can definitely see them winning tonight. And then Game 6, I'd have them favored. And then Game 7, it is still up in the air. This series heavily favored the Rangers. I'd say they have a 90% chance of closing out this series. Do not get me wrong, but Carolina has been on the Rangers level. The Rangers have just got some bounces, got some finishing, and Shesterkin has shut it down. I could easily see Carolina coming back from this 3-1 deficit. Not likely, but it's possible. Next up, playing Draisaitl with McDavid does more harm. This comes to us from Kevin. Does more harm than good, given the Oilers' second line is useless. Yeah, I got to agree with this. Although having that super line of McDavid, Draisaitl, and Hyman, very hard to stop. It makes their second line of RNH, Warren Foegele, and Evander Kane utter dog shit. Probably without a doubt the worst second line in these entire playoffs. They just lack so much depth beyond that first line. If Vancouver can match up properly, get their best guys on the ice, when that top line is out there, it's easy to slow down the rest of the team, shut down the rest of the team. So I agree. I think Draisaitl should be playing that second line role. It's fun to have the big boys all together, but if they're not really clicking that night, you basically have no offense outside of that. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is not a legit second line center on an actual contender. Evander Kane and Warren Foegele are definitely not wingers on a second line for an actual contender. So in looking at Edmonton, I think they do need to spread it out and have better depth overall. Next up, Boston beats Florida in a 7, reverse of what happened last year. Yeah, I don't know about that, just considering how demoralizing that Game 4 loss was. I think Florida's probably going to put them away in 5 games pretty handedly. It looked like that they were looking pretty good in that game, up 2-1, or were they? I believe they're up 2-0 as well. When looking at it, just bad for Boston. I think they don't have the momentum that you would like to see heading into this Game 5, heading back to Florida. Don't see it happening. Next up, Igor Shesterkin is the best goal. This comes to us from Bobby. Igor Shesterkin is the best goalie in the NHL, and it's not close at all. Right now, it's hard to argue against that. I think overall, yes, Hellebuck did kind of shit the bed in the playoffs. His defense core was horrible. Don't get me wrong. I can't say it's like without a doubt, but yeah, if I was in a playoff game tomorrow with a fresh team, yeah, I'd want Igor Shesterkin in net protecting me, considering he had a 9-31 in 2022, 9-29 in 2023 when they lost in the first round. And this year he's also playing fantastic. I definitely get where you're coming from. In my July 15th, when I do my top 50 skaters and top 20 goalies, he's probably going to be the number one goalie. Yeah, considering unless Demko comes back and like balls out for the Vancouver Canucks, I don't think, unless Jeremy Swayman goes on a historic run, but even then, I don't think those guys are going to be higher than Igor Shesterkin, considering his regular season track record the last 3 years. Vezina last year, 9-16. This year still had like a pretty healthy 9-12, as well as being the best playoff goalie over the last 3 years. Yeah, Igor Shesterkin is looking like the best, but I still don't think that it's not close. It's not like a Dominic Hasek in the late 90s or something like that, where he won 5 Vezinas in 6 years. In 2 hearts. Let's not get too ridiculous. Next up from Matt, Bab33. Draisaitl is better than Marner, but other than that, the Oilers are just the Leafs. I get what you're saying from they lack maybe the depth that you expect from a legit contender. So as a result, if their star players do not show up, they're not winning games. But I do think the Leafs might have a better second and third pair when it comes to defensemen, but the Oilers' first pair is very elite in Ekholm and Bouchard, but CC and Nurse are just so goddamn bad. The Leafs don't have exactly that, but I get what you're saying. Goaltending lets them down. Depth lets them down. If their star players are not really bowling out, I get what you're saying. They're basically the Edmonton Oilers. They're basically the Toronto Maple Leafs, but have been in this year, actually, the Western Conference is probably harder than the Eastern Conference, but in prior years, they were just in the easier conference, so they were able to get out of the first round. It didn't look like a complete fail, but if they lose in the second round, there's going to be some comparisons, rightfully so, between the Toronto Maple Leafs and Edmonton Oilers being pretty big failures. Next up, the refs have been good. People are just complaining. This comes to us from Matt Mag 1013. I can't say exactly that. I think there have been a bunch of ticky-tack calls. I think people overreact to it a little bit. Yes, some of the calls are maybe bullshit. Your penalty kill should still be able to shut down. The refs aren't screwing you out of your penalty kill, letting up a goal. I think that the one time that it maybe was valid to fully complain was that Boston versus Florida game. Bennett shoves Coyle right into Swayman. The refs on the review say that Swayman wasn't impeded with to make a play. That was absolute bullshit. I do think that the refs have been below average, but at the end of the day, I don't fully blame the refs 99% of the time for the actual outcome of the game. Yes, you might get some calls not going in your direction, but usually it goes both ways. And at the end of the day, your special teams need to step up if the ref fucks up. So when looking at it, yeah, I think people, it's been bad the last like 2 or 3 days to another level, but I still think in general, people do complain a little bit, but I'm not going to excuse the refs. The refs have been bad. They need to step up for sure. And then lastly, the Avs are still a better team and will win the series. I obviously picked the Dallas Stars to win the Stanley Cup, but yeah, game 3, I was shitting my pants. I thought for sure that Dallas was going to lose that game. Avalanche were the better team. Avalanche at home are just so scary. I don't know what it is. They just reach another level. Even in game 1, after the Dallas Stars went up 3-0, the Avs were just it was an avalanche for the Avs nonstop. So I could understand where you're coming from, that the Avs maybe are the better team. They maybe are the more explosive team, especially once they get back from behind. They seem to just shut down everything and just go beast mode. So when looking at it, this series is still up in the air. Even though my Dallas Stars are up 2-1, I'm not confident. I'm not writing it home. I'd say it's genuinely like 53-43 or 57-43 right now in terms of who wins the series, especially if the Avs win tonight. I'm going to get a little bit nervous, but I'm not ready to sweat. I still think Dallas should take care of business. I think they are the deeper team. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about these hot takes? Thank you to everybody that sent them in, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.